Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Rausan Pereira. The Department of Telecommunications has asked the Finance Ministry to offer some GST-related relief to telcos and to bring down import duties of network equipment. But the ministry is not considering any other company-specific relief measures as sought by Vodafone Idea. Speaking to reporters on Tuesday, Telecom Secretary Aruna Sundararajan said that the industry needs to speak in a cohesive voice while seeking further financial relief. Sundararajan was speaking after a meeting of the Digital Commission, and her comments come a day after industry body Cellular Operators Association of India wrote to Telecom Minister Manu urging that the 35,000 crore rupees input tax credit due to telcos from the government be adjusted against spectrum payments and levies as a measure to help carriers oversee financial distress. But the letter added that Jio has a dissenting view on the matter. The industry had also called for a rollback of the basic customs duty increase on several telecom equipment in October 2018 and the duties imposed on printed circuit boards used in them in a bid to curb non-essential imports and address its current account deficit, as well as encourage the Make in India initiative. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze what ails the telecom sector. Joining me on the program today are UK Srivastava, Principal Advisor, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India, Ganapathy Subramaniam, Chief of Bureau, Puthiya Thalaimurai, and Manu, Seth, Director, CMAI, and former Head of Marketing, South Asia, HTC. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. UK Srivastava, I'd like to begin the program with you. First, let's try and put into perspective and try and understand what is the state and the health of the telecom sector in the country today.
See, I will talk what is the limitation in the network as on today. You say, historically, we had very little penetration of fixed line in our network. And most of the developed countries, they had very high penetration of fixed line. So, those who had higher fixed line penetration, they were able to operate broadband over the fixed line, and therefore, they are much ahead of us in terms of download speeds. Our download speed is 512 kbps per second compared to some of the nations who have gone to even 100 mbps per second. Now, this is a major limitation. When the network started growing, private service providers came, they started deploying the network using cellular technology. Now, cellular technology has limitation in terms of download speeds, and therefore, our speeds have not increased, though we have almost 1.2 billion connections, but the fixed line is almost 18 million or something, and accordingly, the broadband connectivity also on the fixed line is extremely poor. So, what is required is that we lay lot of fiber. You know, originally the fixed line was operating on copper cables. Copper is very expensive, prohibitively costly. So, optical fiber is cheaper. Now, what we have to do is lay more fiber and prepare ground for easy right of way permissions and lower cost of right of way, so because the state governments, sometimes they charge huge amount for permitting the laying of fiber, etc. So, if we are in a position to do this, more and more fiber will be laid, and India's position in the broadband readiness index will increase. Today, we are very low, sometimes much lower than even our some of the smaller neighbors. So, this is a major problem in our telecom network. The download speed has to improve, IT penetration has to increase, so that it reflects on the growth of this country, the GDP of this country directly.
Especially at a time when we are talking about digital India, there's this digital India push. So, this is something that we need.
Precisely. And the limitation today is that the right of way cost is very high, and the time for receiving right of way permission is very long.
Right.
November 2017, Department of Telecom has come out with a gazette notification and advising the state governments to give quicker right of way permission and also charge very little amount to the service providers. Otherwise, it becomes very prohibitive to lay the fiber. Now, some of the states have responded, but most of the states have not responded. So, it takes a lot of time for service provider to lay the fiber, and it is going to be detrimental in future also, because you are not able to exploit the full potential of fourth generation network, 4G systems. The 5G is already at our doorstep. We are not ready, because the BTSs, the towers have to be connected with very high speed systems. Those high speeds are not possible on the present radio systems. They have to be on fiber.
Right.
So, fiber penetration in the country has to be increased. Just let me add a small detail to you, that our 25%, roughly 25% of towers in this country, they are connected with fiber, whereas in developed nations it is in excess of 70%. So, we will not be able to give very high speed to the consumers unless we connect our towers with fiber and the fiber reaches home, so that fixed line there is a lot of bandwidth available to people to download.
So we need to concentrate on infrastructure is what you're suggesting, and that's the way forward really to ensure that we have better technology and better infrastructure in place. Manu, Seth, what is the biggest challenge really as far as the telecom sector is concerned, and how do we address these challenges?
See, we spoke about the infrastructure, we spoke about the reach to the last mile at the consumer's perspective. The biggest challenge is also the equipment through which the delivery is happening, because that is where the component cost comes into the play, that is where the pricing comes into the play. And the biggest strength we have as a country is that we have the large number of the consumer base. And when we integrate it back to the whole concept of New India, the digital India, we are trying to create an ecosystem which talks about integration, which talks about digitization. But at the same point of time, the components, the telecom equipments which contributes to connect the whole ecosystem right from the center server to the consumer, that is where the cost plays the biggest role, the price plays the biggest role. So there has been a lot of fluctuations in the duties, and what becomes a challenge is, yes, government have withdrawn a lot of things which is given to the benefit, but by the time it gets executed to the market, it reaches to the last mile. It's like 3 months down the line, because what production will be imported right now and the production which will come out of it will reach to the consumer perspective after 45 days or 60 days. What happens to the stock that is there or the previous components that has been imported? So I think we need to bring some more synergies in terms of the executions of our planning things. Yes, we are working in the most advanced stage, and technology is something which is constantly changing, and we are running with that. We are all talking about 5Gs and other things. We are talking about virtual reality. We are trying to say that how we make the connectivity and bring benefits in terms of entertainment domain. We bring benefits in terms of the medical domain. So the challenges is from the infra, which we have pointed out, the cost of the components, because that is the equipment which is helping us to deliver that service provider benefits to the last consumer. Until unless it reaches to the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 towns and villages, we can't be a good and a digital India. Yes, we have a good vision about it. We have a good planogram about it. It needs to be executed and aligned well at all respective levels in the states and towns, so that the component providers, which is like a handset manufacturers or the telecom equipment manufacturers, they can see the benefit, they can do in the enhanced productions, they can ensure that their products reaches to the last mile, and whatever the benefits we are trying to integrate from a service, from a benefit, from a service provider. Because see, today the data is very cheap in our country. If you look at the international markets, data is expensive. In our country, data is as good as inexpensive, and the consumption of the data is, everything is being merged onto that one small screen or to the screens at home. We are talking about smart cities, we are talking about smart ecosystem, which means the convergence is bound to happen. So we need to ensure that the components, apart from the infra, which is very, very important, which makes the first step to reach there, these components which is bridging the gap between the service providers and the consumers also needs to be cost effective, needs to be consumed well.
Cost effective and futuristic is what you're suggesting. Absolutely. So that the services reach the end user in a timely manner. Yeah. Ganapathy, Subramaniam, you're talking about the cost. Manu Seth spoke about data. We practically bundled up. We get voice, we get data, we get SMSs, we get everything for virtually 2 rupees a day. Now, is that kind of a model really sustainable for the telecom operators?
As of now, the current situation of our major telecom operators is proving that this kind of a model is not going to be sustainable, because all of them are reporting losses and financial stress. And as you know, recently one operator even announced bankruptcy, that they have no option but to announce their bankruptcy. That is the kind of situation. Now virtually there are only 3 major players at the pan-India level, and then there is the government, BSNL and MTNL serving the country as a whole. So the competition has come down quite a lot. Even then the tariffs are not going up, which is good for the consumers, but at the same time the situation is not going to be sustainable. So therefore, we have to go for a generational shift now. With the current tariffs, how will the telecom sector be financially viable? First of all, we need to move to 5G. 5G technology is going to be much more faster and much more helpful to all our future technologies. And the government announced along with the budget a vision for 2030, how our economy is going to move, what are the major areas of development that we need to focus on, because India is going to become one of the top 3 economies of the world and we don't have much time to prepare for that. So therefore, one, as Mr. Srivastava said, the optic fiber, it has to go all over. I mean, now we see it in Delhi, maybe in Mumbai and some other place. No, it has to go to each and every village. Only then the telephony that we look at will totally go through a generational shift and we will have, say, services which are much faster and more efficient. And telecom is not going to be just communication. In a few years from now, it's going to be everything. Like for example, even all the CCTV cameras are going to be networked. It has to be, that is the future. And even your retail sales, you may be able to, with your voice, ask for a metro ticket. Voice recognition, face recognition, safety, security, ID, everything is going to merge into telecom. So therefore, we have to build the complete infrastructure for that in an efficient manner so that the operators are also able to work efficiently and move to future technology. See, now voice is no more a revenue stream, because voice anybody can do, with a data service can do voice free of cost. Nobody is going to pay for that. So therefore, you have to add new services for which people will pay value added services, which will keep the telecom companies also doing well and also do a great service to the country's economy and the consumer.
Sure. Yes, Manu, you wanted to add something.
One point which is adding, when we are talking about integration, we are talking about the connected ecosystem. One thing which has been a major challenge in the telecom sector because of last lot of duties and infra, lot of unemployment has happened, which has created a lot of dissatisfaction. So there is a lot of talent which is here in the country. So point is, yes, when we are aiming for the Make in India, the New India, there is a talent pool which is there and which is really bringing a lot of new innovations around that. A lot of those new initiatives which are tying back to artificial intelligence, machine learning, data analytics, blockchains, the complete IoT ecosystem what we are talking about is mean that we have good talent, we have enough reach, we have enough markets, the consumer base is with us. Now the only thing is that we need to rightly align the channel which can deliver to the last mile, where we say that yes, we need to be immediately ready for the 5G, we need to be immediately ready for the future technology perspective. What does that mean? Yes, there is a service provider component. Along with that, it's important for the component manufacturers to deliver to that stage, so that the equipments that we are bringing into the ecosystem or into our day-to-day lifestyle is really helping to deliver to the last mile. And that is where we see a new India, we see envisaged a new visionary Indian market. That's where I like to say that the policies are getting better. Now we are taking some steps. We need to ensure that it's even better for the last mile.
Absolutely.
So that they can deliver it.
An inclusive India, basically, where everyone is part of the new India that we are talking about.
Correct.
Srivastava, that having been said, several measures have been taken. Manu Seth also mentioned that, we have the new telecom policy, we have the BharatNet and so on and so forth. Yeah. What is the progress really thus far, and what more needs to be done so as to ensure that we get this last mile connectivity?
I mean, there is a lot of urgency. Now everybody is aware of the problem. The NDCP came, National Digital Communication Policy. Earlier it used to be called Telecom Policy. It came last year. And it envisages that there should be a limit of 50, enhanced limit of 50 Mbps download to every citizen in the country by 2022. Now, in order to achieve that, the government is involving state governments and trying to convince them that infrastructure has to be created. The policies have to support, smooth installation of new infrastructures. And then new players have to enter the market. New players have to start building infrastructure, which is on shareable basis. You know the example of telecom towers. The telecom towers are installed by tower companies, and then it is shared by telecom service providers. So the cost gets, divided as the number of telecom service providers sharing the infrastructure, it increases. So, here in this case also, the individual cities, the ducts have to be laid. You lay the ducts so that the optical fiber cables flow through that. You need cables for universities to run their systems, to banks to run their system, big establishments, even the security cameras of police and other organizations. So, it requires laying of lot of cables, massive amount of cables, and therefore, you can't dig every day, you can't dig the road every day. So, there has to be duct construction in all the cities and towns, so that there is a provision for simply pulling the cable through it as and when it is required, and then there should be investors who should be ready to invest in the infrastructure, so that they are able to lease the fiber itself to individual users in any whenever they want. You remember that we say that data is the new oil. It's a new currency. Everything is in terms of data, and for creating that data data movement, you have to create the infrastructure, and this only will pump your GDP, nothing else.
Sure, infrastructure is something that we stressed upon. What about something like, GST relief, some policy level changes really that the operators have been asking for, have been clamoring for, maybe something on those lines as well?
I will comment on the issues that relate to Telecom Regulatory Authority. Last year, we made a recommendation to the government to reduce duties on import of components and various equipment, telecom equipment, and we have suggested lot of measures to promote domestic manufacturing of telecom equipment. There was a time when the telecom handset import cost itself was equaling the cost of the import of hydrocarbon in the country. Now, this situation has to be reversed. We have to manufacture mobile phones, we have to manufacture all the equipment that is required. Fortunately, we have got huge capacity for production of optical fiber cable in this country. Similarly, there has to be enough capacity and technical know-how and skill to produce other telecom gear in this country, and for that the industry requires certain SOPs. We have recommended that there should be lot of reduction in duty, and there should be promotion, there should be R&D organizations and things like that. Government has to spend a lot of money on R&D, so that equipment is developed here, equipment is manufactured here, and we consume, and not only consume, we export the equipment. We should have enough capacity. We are a large country, we have a lot of capability. We should be able to exploit all this through proper incentive, etc. This is what we have done. I would not be able to comment on GST because I have to leave it to my co-panelists.
Absolutely. Policy level changes, Ganapathy, Subramaniam, maybe GST and so on and so forth?
See, GST has become a little more complicated because there is benefit to one industry, then there is a disincentive to another industry. So, what we need to see is overall production of hardware. So, how much hardware do we produce in the country? How much hardware do you import from, say, various countries like China, Taiwan, whatever. So, whatever import, if it is substituted by local production, one, it will help in creating employment, it will also create a export base, but at the same time there will be some kind of a revenue that the government has to forego. It is a balance that has to be worked out. GST has completed 1 year, now it is almost 1 lakh crore a month. So, that much of collection is now stabilizing more or less, a few thousand crores less or more. So, therefore, once these things stabilize, the government will be able to act more on it. And of course, the concurrence of all the states are needed, because the GST council members are all from different states. They have to agree to this. The central government can't do it on its own. But at the same time, if we make it clear to the industry that we have a vision for production within the country, the Make in India program, hardware is very important. Huge amount of hardware is produced all over the world. So, why not we become a hub for production of hardware? Let's not depend on imports. That will create a lot of employment and a lot of exports. And we also save a lot of foreign exchange, which is, at times when oil prices go up, we come under a lot of pressure. So, this is possible. And every handset that is produced in India, say why not made in India handset? That is going to make a huge addition to the economy, and Mr. Seth will be able to give us the details of how it works. Now, the situation is far different from that. So, we need to make it clear the policy will go in this direction for 5 years, 10 years. That vision is given, then people will be ready to invest, corporates will come forward to commit their money and do marketing and infrastructure building and everything, and that's going to help not only the telecom sector but also all the other sectors including electronics.
Sure. Manu, Seth is just taking the point that Ganapathy was making forward. Mobile manufacturing, handset manufacturing has seen a boom in this country. So why can't the same thing be replicated in allied sectors really?
No, you have touched a very good point. See, this is the segment which has seen the boom. But at the same point of time, if you look at the last couple of months, they have seen an immediate downfall also. There are a lot of closures. So somewhere the policies needs to be executed, right? They are the policies for the betterment. But I think what happened is there were a lot of changes that happened very frequently, because of which there was a lot of uncertainty, which could not envisage that, okay, what is the kind of the capital investments or the infra investments or the organizational investment an organization needs to do. So if we need to align those policies in a longer term, we need to give them a good lending rates for over a period of time. We should not say that, oh, I understand everything has their own earnings and a physical deficits and other things are all interrelated. But if we make a kind of a business plan, say for any setup that we do is not for 2 years or 3 years, it's for 10 years and 15 years, so that we can export to the international markets and we can make a big hub. So on the same lines, if we can boom up in the mobile handset category, we can even boom up in the other connected ecosystem. So when we spoke about, there was a reference of CCTV cameras, there is going to be a reference of a touchscreen monitors, there are going to be an ecosystem around smart locks, smart energy meters also. So when we are going towards the new India and the developing India, there is a lot of avenues around those segments, which empowers education, which empowers employment, which empowers the investment. The only thing is that policies needs to be slightly flexible. There needs to be a long-term commitment even from the corporate houses that yes, they are not for short-term vision. They are not there for quick money. They have to give back to the country now. They have to make things back for the country. When we all say that, oh, it's for our country, our India and our new India, we should ensure that we can very easily cater all the needs and requirements to all our ASEAN markets sitting from here, because we have a huge consumption, we have a huge market. So the opportunity is there. It's just like we need to streamline. So anything starts when we put up a business plan, we say that, oh, what is the component of the real estate? What is the component of the electricities? What's the component of the infra? So everything plays a role. Now, if all that component is playing a double digit, which at the end of the day adds to the cost of the final product, then we become uncompetitive. Then we are not competitive in the market. Then someone says that I want to import it back from the other markets because they have some better subsidies. That's where the distraction starts happening.
Right. Okay. Closing comments now from all my guests, starting first with you, UK Srivastava. What's the best way forward? How do we revive the sector? Because there was immense promise when it started off. How do we revive it?
The sector continues to hold promise. It's only proper implementation of the government's stated policy, that is NDCP, which has come last year. And if every actors in this start performing their duties and honestly start performing, certainly there is a very bright future. We will be in a position to adopt the latest technology. We will be also able to produce good quality telecom gear in this country. Remember that we have been adopting the latest generation systems in our country very timely. We have never lagged behind. When the 5G comes also, we will be ready to adopt it. The only thing is that we should have the in-house development and manufacturing capability in our country, so that we save foreign exchange. And not only that, because we are a large country, we should produce a lot of equipment and export it to the foreign markets. So
all right,
it will happen.
Sure. Okay. So there is a lull at this point in time, but the future looks bright is what you're suggesting. Ganapathy, Subramaniam?
Frank, I want to add one more dimension to this. The telecom industry is also going to become the backbone for entertainment. Every home, my dream of a digital India is that every home should have a fiber optic cable connected. And whatever services you need, everything should flow through that. So no need for set-top boxes or whatever. One router should be able to provide, and that is the future. It's going to happen, because all your entertainment, your news, everything, any information that I need, any query, anything that I need to order, everything will be at the touch of a screen, mobile screen or touch screen, whatever it is. For that means that it's going to drive a huge consumer industry. So therefore, the government takes a few steps to help the industry in building the roadblocks. It's very good. The policy has been announced, very nice. We have a roadmap ready. But even if the industry is incentivized to do it, nothing wrong, because whatever we may spend now, is going to come back much more in a bigger way in 10 years, 15 years. That's the digital India. I look at it, it's going to give a lot of return. Every paisa we invest is going to give a lot of return.
Okay, so the sector needs some kind of hand-holding for the time being, and the government should support it now because the benefit, they're going to reap the benefits later is what you're suggesting. Manu, Seth, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
No, I think we have really covered good points in terms of execution and transformation, and we all agree that this sector is going to bind everything as a consumer segment. So we have to look at the long-term benefits. We have to give some rebates and some benefits to the investors and the corporate houses so that they can really invest big, no short-term gains. Because this is unifying the industry, this is unifying the consumer of India, this is unifying the new India, and that is where we are heading up to. So when we create that ecosystem with the longer benefits to the investors or the corporate houses, I am sure in terms of our service providers, in terms of our hardware equipment providers, they all will do the maximum for the consumer. They will all try to meet the best pricing so that there is a lot of consumption, which generates everything, which generates revenue for the consumption of the content, which generates revenue from the buyer's market, which generates revenue for the investors, not in the short run, but in the longer run. So the vision needs to be 5-year plus, 4-year plus, so that they can make their returns back and it can be a better country.
Sure.
And the revenues come back to us.
Sure. So don't have a short-term memory, have a, short-term, don't look at it in the short term, but look at it in the long run and look at it as an investment option is what the panelists are suggesting at this point in time. The future looks bright for the telecom industry. With that, it's a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's it from me. See you again next time.